Hey, what is up YouTube? This is Powerhouse here with another one of my videos, and today, once again, we are going with another tier list. Yeah, I'm shooting these tier lists rapid fire, but I hope you guys are enjoying these. Today, we are going to look at the Fallout series. Now, I had somebody in one of my 90s, top 10 90s lists, games from the 90s, mention Fallout 1, and I thought about either putting it in a list or maybe just talking about it here, just doing something with it. And I decided, well, let's review the whole series. I actually recently went back to play these games, so this one took a bit of time to get going. Some of these I played for way longer than others. I haven't beaten all of them, unfortunately. I've beaten some of them, and then if you look at the later ones like Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, some of them it's like you just get so lost in the side quests and the world that you end up just not completing the main quest. And that happens to me with a lot of Bethesda games and open world games. I end up getting really sucked into the side content and the side quests more than I do with the main quests. Not to say that it takes away from the game or anything, but that's just how I play. So we are going to look at them, and the Fallout 76 I decided to put in its own tier, and we are just not going to talk about it because it is its own thing, and we'll go from there. So starting out, we're going with the game that started it all, with the first Fallout. It was developed in the 90s, made by the legendary Interplay company, and we'll get more into Interplay and kind of the end of their studio once we get to the Brotherhood of Steel. But one thing at a time. This game, this was one of the few Fallout games that I've beaten thoroughly, or maybe the only one. But this is one of them that I've beaten thoroughly, and the first time I played it, I really enjoyed it. Really, if you love the CRP genre, this is definitely a staple of it. Tons of choices. The special system was introduced here, and it was great. The whole strength, perception, endurance, intelligence, all that stuff. The customization, the world, getting into it, the post-apocalyptic feel of it all. Was really awesome, and plus it was a great setup too, because you play as the savior, the vault dweller, and you're looking for water processing. I think it was like basically a filter or whatever to fix the one that's in your vault, and you go through a whole myriad of ways to fix it, but then you figure out, oh, there's a bigger problem afoot that needs to be taken care of. And then you get introduced more and more into the world. It's a very gritty world, and there's some profanity as a result. And the tone of this game, I would say, holds up beautifully. It really does feel desolate, and it really does feel like a post-apocalyptic world if humanity was to somehow still survive. So this one I'm very fond of, but there are some, for it being a product of its time, as everything is in a way, there are some issues when it comes to combat wise and all that stuff. You don't really have any control over your squad, so you're basically just fighting alone, and sometimes your squad will do dumb stuff. You can tell them before, hey, keep with weapons, keep with that, but then once battle commences, all bets are off. So it can definitely be frustrating from a combat perspective. And there's just things that the second game has done from a gameplay perspective that I think tops the first Fallout. Although I do think the narrative of the first Fallout, and especially one of the main characters that you meet towards the very end, once you finally see him and examine him for who he is, it's very grotesque and it's honestly crazy. But there's a lot of memorable characters here, a lot of great story, ton of player choice here, a lot involved, and really a staple of the CRPG genre. But it does have some faults. I'm going to put it at A for now. I may reorganize this. The one thing is, I really don't know if there's a definitive Fallout title, and the reason why I say that is because Fallout has changed a lot throughout the years, so I think anyone's favorite, this whole list is basically subjective anyway, but I think it's very hard to say which one is better because some people may have more of a fondness for other. It's all opinion at the end of the day. I'm not sure what will go on the S tier, but we'll definitely figure this out. All right, so next is Fallout 2. which is a direct continuation of the events from the first Fallout game. It's not really a spoiler because it's kind of, you learn this as soon as you play it, and also it tells you, right off the bat. But basically, with the Vault Dweller at the end of the first one formed a tribe, and now you are the chosen one. And as the chosen one, you have to go save your tribe and basically find this whole thing called the Gaia Restoration Kit. And you go about this, and it's definitely a different start from the beginning. The tone is much different. I mean, at first it's very, tribal, whatever, which is very odd considering how the first one starts out. But then after you get through the whole trial, you get into the world, you run into your first city, and you'll notice definitely there are some tonal differences compared to the first one that I'm not really too much of a fan of. For the good things, the gameplay is improved slightly in a lot of different ways. One of the things that they improved upon is the ability to tell someone to move out your way, because navigation in the first Fallout would be annoying. If someone would stand in your way, there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to hope they move. But in the second one, you could tell them get the hell out the way and move forward from there. So there's a lot of little improvements to Fallout 2 which make it from a gameplay perspective superior to 1. However, what I don't like about this game is the tone. The tone, I feel like, is not to the level of the original. It definitely has more of a, I remember I played Fallout 1 and then I played Fallout 2 right after, and Fallout 1 isn't too long, like you can go through it pretty quickly, but Fallout 2, I remember just being like, the tone is so off. A lot more talk about sex, a lot more pop culture references, and there's a lot of stuff here that really breaks the immersion for me. I'm not sure where I want to place this, because like I said, in one hand I think it's superior from a gameplay perspective to Fallout 1. There's a lot of little improvements, as I mentioned, but the tone to me really just kind of didn't sit well. I guess if we have to balance it out, we're gonna put this at the same tier as Fallout 1 for now. We'll see if I move this around, but I just think Fallout 2, to me, like I said, just the tonal differences and all that stuff really don't fit very well, in my opinion. However, I still think it's great, and definitely Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, you can't go wrong with either. Next is Fallout Tactics, and this one's a bit of a controversial title for a couple reasons. One of the things is it's a spin-off from the main series, focusing more on combat and the tactical side of things. And to me, I was excited for it. I was ecstatic to get my hands on it. So for this section, you won't see much in the way of footage for this game gameplay, because when recording it, I was having a lot of issues with it. It wouldn't let me progress turns or anything like that, unfortunately. So there are some issues there. But I was really ecstatic to play this one because it was giving me Silent Storm vibes, where I can just recruit troops and whatnot. I can get people in my squad and go from there, and you are able to, and there's a lot of fun stuff to play around with for there, but there's a lot of liberties taken from the lore established of the first two games. There's a lot of contradictions. It gets worse in terms of lore discrepancies and just not being accurate in the next game, Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. It's weird. This is Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel, and this game after is Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. So we're just gonna call it Fallout Tactics to be just to not over confuse things. And the combat itself, you could here it allows you to go real time or turn based, or kind of like a mix of both. And I prefer the I go with the turn based, but the battles can be really slow if you don't turn up the animations. And I just personally feel like, controlling all your units in combat, whatever, it can be kind of boring. Like this game it can get boring because it's just pure combat, really. And after a while, it gets wacky with certain things, mutants and whatnot, and you can play as other creatures, which I think is a positive of the game. So it's not just humans that you get to play as. But it doesn't have anything to really draw you in of Fallout 1 and 2. And I think, despite the crazy gory animations of the first two games, it had a lot more going for that than just that. It had a nice rich world. The RPG elements were very top notch. They're good here, so we're not gonna. The problem with it is that the a lot of what you can level up, a lot of the skills really don't apply to the game. So it's like outdoorsman. What the hell is that gonna help me with? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just we're gonna run, we're gonna move, we gotta fight. Like, I don't know how that's gonna help. So there's a couple things like that that are weird. I think it's okay for what it is, but I really don't think there's much to write home about with this one. So we're going to put this at it's we're gonna go with C. I just don't think there's a lot to really keep players invested, including myself. Like I said, it gets boring, like just with the same combat, and it lacks what other strategical turn-based strategy games have. Like I said, like I mentioned before, the game Silent Storm, that's a lot of fun because of the different scenarios that you can find yourself in and all that. Silent Storm is awesome. I reviewed it. My review sucks of it, but my review of the expansion is pretty good. But I'm getting sidetracked. We'll go to the next one. And the next one we have Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, which I actually do own this game, and was pretty expensive when I bought it. I think it was like 30 something. But I was really excited shouldn't say excited, but I was curious to see if this game was as bad as they said it was. And I gotta say, it's pretty bad. It's really bad. Just to keep it on, just for layman's terms. One of the biggest issues with this game is just, once again, the radical departure it has from the lore established from the first two games, and just the tone is so freaking off. Like, if you thought I had problems with the tone of the second game being more of a, of a pop culture kind of thing with a lot of, Easter eggs and pop culture references and feeling kind of weird and out of place in that regard, this game is horrible with that. I mean, it's like some rock metal. Like, the music is completely different from the 60s style of music that the earlier games established for itself. So it definitely feels weird in that regard. And also a lot of it's just the tone of the game is more campy, comical, I guess it's trying to go with. I'm really not sure, but it's just trying to be like hardcore, super edgy, and it's so freaking dated. Like, it's so 2000s, mid 2000s, which I think is when this game was released. So it just feels so dated tonally and from an atmosphere standpoint as a result. And I thought, well, that may be a problem, but the gameplay at least has to be good, right? I mean, it's an action RPG in the Fallout universe, and you got some characters to play with. It has to be good, right? Nah, it sucks. They really tried. So the story with this one is Project Snowblind. I think it was Snowblind. Yeah. Project Snowblind Studios, who created the Baldur's Gate games before this one, and also created Champions of Norath, which I recommend that game. They created the engine for this game, and this game was released without their knowledge of that. So basically, roughly speaking, they released the game without their permission, without the developer's permission, and the developer, or without Snowblind's permission, and they ended up suing Interplay, and Interplay ended up losing that settlement. Now, I'm not 100% certain if it was settled out of court, but I know Interplay took a massive hit on that. So as a result, some people look at this game as like what ultimately doomed Interplay. I think at that time there was a lot of things dooming Interplay. Lionheart, that game didn't do very well either. So there's a lot of things. I just think Interplay was going downhill, and this game just helped accelerated that. And so basically what I was trying to say from a gameplay perspective is it uses that engine, and it just doesn't fit in a Fallout universe. Or maybe it could, but it just doesn't work here. That game is more suited for a game like a Champions of Norath, like a Baldur's Gate. It fits perfectly, but for here, it doesn't, and it sucks. And I'm sorry, this game just freaking sucks. All right, so now that the interplay years are over and done with, we enter the second half, the latter half of it, which is the Bethesda. Yeah, basically that, the Bethesda place, the Bethesda phase, and I don't think they're gonna give up the license anytime soon. And we started with mid 2000s release in Fallout 3. Now Fallout 3, or I think it was like 2009, 2010, I think. Oh wait, whatever. I think it was 08. But Fallout 3, at the time, I remember being very impressed by it. Just being like a first-person Fallout game, and this was actually the first Fallout game I played. I played Fallout 1 after I played Fallout 3, and I had a lot of fun with this one. I just really liked exploring the world, the way when you first come out of the vault, being the lone wanderer. When you first come out the vault after the fiasco that happens in Vault 13, and just exploring the world, the different choices you have and the different routes you can find, little secrets here and there. The dialogue options were great. It seemed to play a lot of homage to the older games. So a lot of people were concerned, like, oh, they're gonna dumb it down or whatever, but they did a great job from an RPG perspective. And the narrative was pretty good for what it is. It wasn't great. I think the earlier games I feel like have more of a charm, especially the first one. There's something that I can't quite put my finger on it when it comes to the first game, but it definitely has its level of charm within it. But Fallout 3, like I said, it was something that was much needed for the series to move things forward in a new direction, especially because at the time CRPGs were definitely on the downhill, and CRPGs wouldn't be revived until, in my opinion, until Divinity Original Sin came, and then Pillars of Eternity, Divinity Original Sin 2, which great games, but that's beside the point. What doesn't age well, going back to it though, I find this game, I played this game a lot over the years, and I always keep coming back to it. But one thing I do find frustrating is the combat. The combat just flat out freaking sucks. Like the engine used here, that's used in the Elder Scrolls games, I think it's the Creation Engine, whatever. It's used here, and it's really stiff. There's a lot of legacy code that's been around for years before this, and even years after. So there's a lot of jank when playing this game. There's a lot of glitches as expected from this kind of game, and the shooting doesn't feel right. The gunplay doesn't feel good. It was improved in New Vegas. But here, it just wasn't very... It's more frustrating than fun over the years. At the time, I definitely would have put this at S tier because of just how much fun I have with it. And I think from an RPG perspective, it's still a ton of fun and definitely kicks Fallout 4's ass out the water. But like I said, there are still some issues with it that, personally, going back to it, I kind of just, as much as I love exploring DC, and as much as I love the desolate feel of everything, it gets frustrating from a gameplay and combat perspective. And there's a ton of combat. You can't talk your way out of every situation. You have raiders, you have monsters, you have super mutants. Try to talk to a super mutant, unless they're like specific characters, yeah, good luck with that, fam. But I would say that despite all that, I definitely still think it holds up in terms of, like I said, from just the overall impact. Or maybe, let me think about this one actually. So is it as good as Fallout 1 and 2? I know a lot of people... See, this is where I think Fallout gets hard, because it's like, it's not the same genre at this point. Like, you go from a CRPG with an isometric perspective to a first-person RPG. It's completely different, but I do think it was a necessary step forward, and I'll put it at the A tier. You know what? I'm gonna put it at the A tier because I think from an RPG perspective, it's still great. The gunplay, not as good, but we'll talk more later. And the next one is Fallout New Vegas, which is a lot of people's favorite, and I'm not really confident enough to say if it is or not. And that's because after playing Fallout 3 and then getting into New Vegas, There was just something about it at the time that I was so burnt out from playing. Like, I think I was just burnt out from the Fallout 3 formula, which is a shame because I do think um, that this game is, freaking phenomenal, and I think is the best combination of an RPG and a combat perspective. Fallout 3 started out really slow, but thankfully for New Vegas, you move pretty quickly, so it doesn't feel like such a slow start. You get basically left for dead by a group of people. I'm not going to say who, and you end up getting resurrected by this doctor in this town, and you go about your business as expected. You can also, even certain parts, you can actually like skip the tutorial if you just want to get right to it, and you could just peace out and leave the town. They got like some beginner quests you can take, but if you're like, screw this, you could just leave town and peace out. I don't know if I'd recommend all that, but you can if you want. So I really love that sense of freedom in this game, and Fallout 3 has had a great sense of freedom too. But I definitely do think that New Vegas extends it just a little bit more, and New Vegas definitely perfects the formula without sacrificing too much of the RPG side of things. And I think that's what makes New Vegas so great. Now, as much, this is why I'm struggling to find a perfect Fallout game, because it's like all of these games are great, but it's like the tone is always one thing. I think I like a lot of this game, especially in the first town where it feels very like camaraderie and all that stuff. But to me, once you get to Vegas, it becomes more of a yeehaw cowboy kind of game, like wahoo. So it's like, I prefer the more desolate post-apocalyptic feeling, like damn, like life kind of sucks right now. But I get it. A lot of this game borrowed from what Buren was trying to do. So the original Fallout 3, before Interplay got shut down and before that got canceled, or actually I think it was when Blackout Studios got shut. Oh, yeah, I think it was basically, that got canceled. So there's a lot of elements taken from that game and applied to here. But outside of tone, I mean, I'm really struggling to find, too many negatives to say about this one, because the gunplay is far superior to the third. Like, you can actually look down your damn freaking sights for once, which is, that alone makes the game, 10 times more modern than 3. Like, that makes it so much more playable, just, from a playability, from a combat perspective. I did have a bit more stuttering with this game from a performance wise. I don't know why that was the case, but it just is what it is. You can mod weapons now. There's way more weapons to play around with, and honestly, there's just a lot more content in this game. At least it feels like it. Again, I haven't fully explored this game, and I feel like I still need to do a lot more to really appreciate it. But I think from what I've seen and everything, I think I will put it at the S tier. I think it definitely, like I said, from what I've played previously and now going back into it, it's like, you know what? I think it is deserving of it. And like I said, I already feel like going back to play Fallout 3 and then playing this is like, I can actually play this one. All right, the next is Fallout 4. Now, it wasn't overall considered positive at the time, but there was some fan backlash, or at least not backlash, but more of just like an air of disappointment within the title. Now, there's a lot to love about this game. Again, combat once again improved. Not only can you look down the sights, but the whole gameplay is just far smoother when I play it. There are some like frame rate issues I have every once in a while, but for the most part, it's like very smooth to play. There's a lot in the melee combat has been improved, so it's not just wildly swinging. You can like do power swings. It feels much more impactful. You can, when you're fighting ghouls, you can like shoot their legs off, or you could like, take their arm off and stuff. It just feels very cathartic in that way. It's just very satisfying from a combat perspective, from shooting, from everything. The audio is far improved too, and the graphics definitely get a touch up. They're not like immensely better in every aspect, but they are improved. Now, that's from the gunplay and the gameplay, and there's also power armor. which you can get into it. You can find pieces, so you can build up power armor pieces. Power armor is completely different now. It's like it's basically a mini mech almost, and I enjoy the hell out of it. I just love wearing power armor. So when you talk to people, it's like, you know, you're talking from the power armor. I love putting my companions in power armor and then having conversations with them. It's really cool. I can't really explain the feeling, but it's just really cool to have like a deep conversation in power armor, your character talking with their voice, and then another character talking to you in power armor. It's just, there's something epic about it. I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just so cool. But with that said, you know, and also too, you could like take a gun and like build it into like a super gun or something, so you could really like mod the hell out of so many things. So with that said, my biggest gripe with this game is the RPG elements. Like, they really scaled back a lot of things. Now, before, if you were a horrible shot, you were a horrible shot. You could not shoot for anything. You were garbage at shooting. So in this game, you can shoot. Like, even though your character isn't really trained or anything like that, you can shoot like perfectly, no issues whatsoever. So it lacks a lot of the RPG feel, and I understand it from one perspective, but another one I'm like, doesn't really feel much. You can also, the whole special system is done differently. So instead of being a particular kind of character, eventually, if you level up enough times, you will eventually max out all your stats and get all the perks and stuff. There's a lot to digest when it comes to the leveling up system and the perk system. So LGR did a review on that, so if you check his review out, he breaks it down perfectly, and so have other people as well. But I've grown to be okay with it, because at the end of the day, you know, you're gonna get to it. There's no level cap or anything, so I understand the approach here. But it's like all your skills start at 1, so it's like, or pretty low, so it's like you can't really, like, instead of starting at 5, the base, it's like they all start at 1. So, you know, it's just it's a lack of the RPG flavor that we've come to expect from the previous games. And even for the dialogue system is terrible. They went with like a Mass Effect system that's like worse than Mass Effect. It's like, it's really just like, it all boils down to 4 options. Yes, sarcastically, yes, but questions, or not yet. You know, there just doesn't feel like a lot of RPG here, and it feels like a completely different game as well, which again is why this list is so hard to do. There's just so many different games, and they're all different in some way. You know, Fallout 1 and 2 are very similar, but everything else is very different. But, and also 3 in New Vegas. But anyways, back to what I'm saying. So yeah, and it's like, there's a lot to like from a combat perspective, but the RPG takes a huge nosedive. And I still enjoy it, you know, because I think the gunplay is, like I said, being in power armor is fantastic. The different upgrades you can come up with, it's a lot of fun. DLC has helped to improve some of the things. The companions you meet are a lot of fun. I found this one super mutant one who he says like a lot of random stuff about wanting milk or something, but yeah, he's a lot of fun. But the older games had great companions too, so that's not really, you know, particular to this game. I honestly like Fallout 4, but I like it for different reasons. I don't like it for the reasons I like the other ones. It's hard for me to get immersed into the world of Boston, and you know, I was born in the Northeast, so I like Boston in general, or at least I have to. But you know, I like the Patriots. I like all that stuff. So I got no beef with Boston, but the way it's presented here, it just wasn't that interesting. Some of the characters suck in this game, like Preston. We already know nobody likes him. I just think, like I said, the RPG side just took a huge toll, and I don't really know if it was worth the cost. And because of that, I'm gonna put it below the other ones, because it just, you know, it really lacks in that regard. So there you have it. That was my tier list of Fallout. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This was a hard list to do personally, just because they're so different. Every game, you know, it feels something different, especially when you compare it to the Interplay half and then the Bethesda half. It's really interesting to see the different changes that Fallout has gone throughout the years, and you know, I'm gonna look forward to the next Fallout game. I'm always excited to play Fallout. I enjoy the series. So let me know what you guys think. What's your favorite? How you would do it differently? Let's keep the discussion going. Thank you guys for watching as always. And this is Powerhouse signing off.